At a time when the world is grappling with COVID-19, attention to other diseases is waning. Now, according to the Federal Ministry of Health, an estimated 122 million Nigerians, and that's 2 out of every 3 Nigerians, are at risk of neglected tropical diseases. Now, of the number, 20% fall under the preschool age children, and 28% are school-age children, and 52% are adults. Now, a group of 20 diseases like river blindness, conjunctivitis, elephantiasis, leprosy are common in tropical or subtropical regions and are closely associated with poor sanitation, lack of water sources, substandard housing condition, and inadequate access to health care. Now, Nigeria requires an estimated 154 billion naira to control and eradicate neglected tropical diseases. Right, that's part of the focus of our discussion right now. Joining me now to discuss this is infectious disease specialist and executive medical director, Rofeka Medical and Dental Hospital, Professor Joe Onigbinde. Professor, it's nice to have you join me right now.
Good morning.
And welcome back to the country.
It's good to see you. Good
Great.
to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, when we mention tropical diseases, make us understand why are they called tropical diseases?
Well, just like you rightly said, tropical diseases means they are diseases that are actually prevalent or that are found in the tropical zones or subtropical regions, such as Africa, Asia, and all those where you have warm weather, so they can survive.
So but their prevalence in the tropical regions,
sure,
is it a product of the weather or there's some other human?
Both.
Okay.
Product of the weather, because most of those things they can't survive in all these other regions, temperate regions, and then the environment also, environmental health also plays a very great role in having them. And most of these tropical, in fact, most of the problems we have in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, are because of poverty, environmental problems, and all those things. So both are actually important, the weather as well as the environmental health.
Okay. Now, over the years, there has been concerted efforts to fight polio, which Nigeria succeeded in overcoming. We're still hoping that it is sustained that way from surveillance and all of that. And we also saw in the last 20 years concerted effort also against HIV. Although that has not been overcome, it's still there, but we see the level of awareness is up to a great extent, and the way it used to be before is changing. Now, when it comes to issues like Lassa fever is still here with us, killing people. We still have tuberculosis. Yellow fever, in fact, is still springing up in the light. We'll be hearing this. What would it take to eradicate some of these diseases, really?
Well, I want to say that you mentioned that you have some concerted efforts against those things that have been eradicated. But the problems with some of these, or with what we are coping with right now, is because they are not prevalent all over the world. Okay. So that's why they are called neglected diseases. And Africans and most other poor countries where these things are prevalent are not really serious about tackling, and we are very poor. So we need efforts of other nations, or especially First Nations, to actually tackle these things. These diseases are very costly, I must say, and so that has been a great constraint. And apart from that, information is also very key. Information about these diseases are not adequate. Information is not adequate. I want to say, for instance, I have the privilege of studying tropical diseases as first postgraduate study I made some 30 years ago in Belgium. This institution is not actually, maybe about 1/10 of the size of LUTH, Lagos University Teaching Hospital, but the type of research that you have every year, or even every day, is for more than what you have in years in the whole of Nigeria. So we also have to think of that. Our government and other people are very rich try to focus on research and we don't have to wait all the time for people outside to help us. Especially these things do not actually affect them so seriously. So because we are the one living with these things, we have to tackle this thing head on ourselves.
So what will require is more of fund, is it? Because the point there is, when it comes to specialists, we have so many international specialists. You are here. There's so many of your colleagues that we are so proud of, and all of that. Is there more of the funding that we need here?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, in the past, almost a decade or more than that, the funding, the health funding in Nigeria has been very, very poor. Very, very poor. Very, very low standard. As poor as 5% or even 2%. And that is a problem. Without funding, you cannot have much done. I did some studies in 2012 about healthcare in Nigeria, and the impact of funding. And you see that without funding, I mean, years where you have funding better, you have better performance. So we need a lot of funding to actually carry some of these projects across.
Now, take us through, or let me say, take us to the classes a little bit when it comes to understanding some of the common tropical diseases like elephantiasis and conjunctivitis, river blindness, and so on. What really causes all of these things?
Oh, yes. There are bacteria infections, viral infections, and also infestations by, what do you call them? The
trypanosomiasis.
Trypanosomiasis, malaria, and all those things. Bacteria, you have virus, and then other infestations by other things. So there are about 20 different types of tropical diseases. So can I mention some of them?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Of course. We'd like to know more of them. We'd like to know.
Well, this is not a classroom.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a semi-classroom, so the ones you can mention is fine.
You have to. Okay. Well, for instance, you mentioned filariasis. That's elephantiasis.
Okay.
Maybe you have seen some people with very big feet. And in our own environment, you say, oh, you stepped on something.
Poison or something.
Yeah, something.
Or maybe from the villages.
Whereas
like they say sometimes.
It's an infestation of this kind of. And then you have also dracocutasis or called dracoculiasis. We have one of our.
There's some of these we have not really heard before.
Yes, that's why I'm very hesitant to mention, because some of this are jaw breaking, and then river blindness. Some of these are also transmitted through pests and mosquitoes, like trypanosomiasis. You have mosquito bites, special mosquitoes that cause this thing. So a lot of this can be controlled with pest controls and then to research. In fact, the pest controls now, okay, you are very familiar with Lassa fever, for instance.
Yeah, exactly.
You have the virus, the Lassa fever virus, so you can control it. That's an example of a viral infection that is also. They do also have even cholera. Cholera is Vibrio cholerae, you know. But I'm afraid to be telling you some of them. So you have both bacteria, and you have viral, and then you have all the other infestations by protozoa organisms, like typhoid, for instance. Typhoid, you know, if you have polluted water or food stuff, you can get infested with this. So
for a disease like Lassa fever, for instance, that started from, or was discovered first in Nigeria, and in fact the name was gotten from the village in Borno State, Lassa village in Borno State, and is more than 50 years now that was discovered. Our inability to eradicate Lassa fever, is it really a product of not having the fund to do so, or it is the issue of not paying attention to it?
Both. Without fund, there's nothing you can do about it. And then we are not so serious about it. Maybe year in, year out, you have outbreak of Lassa fever. It's because we are not so serious about it. And the way we take health issues in Nigeria is, I'm sorry to say, is appalling. It's because we are not serious, and institutions are not focused about doing research Otherwise, for almost 50 years, you should have gotten a cure for Lassa fever, at least vaccine. Even if you don't have a cure, you have a preventive vaccine.
If we have to become serious about it, where should we really start from? The point there is, we remember the days of Professor Olukoyeransome Kuti when he was Minister of Health I think in the 80s or early 90s, thereabout. And there was emphasis on primary health care, where people, the moment something little is detected, you go and you find help immediately, so it doesn't escalate into secondary issues and tertiary issues. Is that where we should start from? Really?
No, that is the way to go. Right. Primary health care, most of these problems we are talking about, they are at the level of primary health care issue. And I want to say, well, Professor Kuti was my teacher, so I don't want to be biased. But we find it difficult not to mention his name. That is the only Minister of Health that all of us will respect a lot. So I remember when we were still students, they would teach us there was a particular lecture, biochemistry we were having for 4 hours. Professor Kuti was standing outside, and towards the end of the lecture, he just came and called the prof, because one of the oldest professors in Luth at that time. He called Professor Okotore, said, "One be by here, one be by." Say, "You come." You spoke Yoruba. Say, "Since when did you come to this institution?" Said, "That was maybe 5-6 years ago." Said, "How many cases of gout have you seen in this place?" You have been taught gout, arthritis, which cases are not common, very, very rare. They are all this Oyebo something. So, and the man was confused. Say, "You see, why are you wasting these people's time? Wow. Why don't you teach them what they will say here? Malaria, typhoid,
things that are relevant to them on a daily basis."
So you see, I think sometimes we have to reorientate ourselves and restructure our syllabi. That's it in the universities and
to be relevant to what we, what the issues, the challenges that we face.
Yes. So primary care is the way to go, and we saw a lot of difference when Professor Kuti was there, when we restructured the primary health care. But almost everything is in shambles now. So primary health care is very important, and then you go to a secondary system. That's where you have government hospitals, and a tertiary, that's the research institution. But the first place to go to tackle all these tropical diseases is primary health care.
Primary health care. All right, we have to leave you here now. Thank you so much, Professor Joe Nigbinde, for your time and enlightenment as well. We really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.